Hey everyone, welcome to the Fantasy Football Endgame. I'm Pierre, and I'm here to talk about running backs for the rest of the season, go over my top 20 rankings. It's only been 2 weeks, but you know what? A lot has already changed, and so we want you to know which running backs you can trust the most going forward. Also, check out the links in the description below. We have a lot of helpful information that you want to check out. We want you to join us all throughout the season because our goal is for you to win every matchup. All right, so let's get into it. Top running backs of the 2021 season. Let's start with tier number one. Well, number one is no surprise. It's still Christian McCaffrey. He has proven why he is the number one running back in all of fantasy. There's no question there. Number two is still Dalvin Cook. Told you that he would be our number two draft pick. He's a little bit banged up right now heading into week 3, but I think he'll be fine. There's no question that he is right there behind McCaffrey at number 2. Derrick Henry, what more can you say about this guy? You could argue that he should be the number one guy. For some reason, he just keeps getting better, not just with age, but with the more carries he gets. That's not how it's supposed to work with running backs. You're actually supposed to wear down at some point, but he's not. He's a guy who's always better in the fourth quarter. And as the season goes on, it looks like this guy might carry a lot of teams to victory in 2021. So right now we have him at number 3. He's even catching passes. When did that happen? Caught a couple of passes against Seattle the other day. But Derrick Henry is number 3 for now. Now, Alvin Kamara at number 4. There is some concern after that huge dud in week 2. This offense itself is looking very suspect because, Jameis Winston came back crashing down to earth as we knew he would. A couple of interceptions, no touchdowns in week 2, and that was against Carolina. This isn't a formidable defense necessarily, but the lack of receivers, right, the pass catching options, they're so thin there that, you know what, teams are going to focus in on the run game, and Alvin Kamara, there's nothing to keep them honest. Those safeties are going to come crashing in. So you have to be a little concerned about Kamara, but we know that his floor is always high because he's more effective as a receiver even than a runner usually. Sean Payton, you have to trust he'll find ways to get him involved. So we're keeping him in the top tier for now, but something to look out for going forward. All right, let's go to the second tier now. Nick Chubb, strong performance against the Texans. I know that's not a great defensive unit, but still, he's a guy who is going to get a lot of run, 95 yards and a touchdown in week 2. And this is somebody who actually might get leaned on even more now that Jarvis Landry is out for the foreseeable future with that knee injury. Odell Beckham still hasn't come back, but this is a team that is going to run. That's what works. That's how they win. And arguably the best offensive line in the league. That's definitely what you want to see in front of your running backs. So right now, Nick Chubb, a strong number 5. Aaron Jones, just like the whole Packer offense, big, massive letdown in week 1. And they're making up for it in week 2. Jones with a strong outburst there. And his work as a receiver is what keeps him propped up so high. So I'm going to put him right behind Chubb. Arguably, he could actually be number 5 before long. But for now, again, just been 2 games. I'm going to keep him right there at number 6 just because the Packers are a little bit unpredictable. All right, let's keep going to number 7, Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor, we do expect great things from him, especially after the way he ended last season, 2020, carried some teams throughout the fantasy playoffs. He is more game script dependent. We saw in the last game against the Rams, got phased out a little bit. If Carson Wentz is hurt for a while, we don't know what the situation is there as of right now in this recording. Could he miss a game? Could he miss several games? Don't know. Word is that both ankles could be injured. That might hurt that entire offense. Taylor might see more carries and more touches because they have to lean on the run game more, but he might not be as efficient. But Indy, kind of like Cleveland, also one of the best offensive lines, so you have to feel pretty good about Taylor's floor at the very least, but I can't put him ahead of any of those other guys. Zeke Elliott, a lot of people freaking out about him. Look, I get it. It's not what you expected out of a first-round pick, and the Zeke of old, is he back? That's a debate for another time. But let's just say, just because Tony Pollard looked good doesn't mean that Zeke necessarily looked bad. He almost had 100 total yards in week 2, and he did score a touchdown. Zeke, I think, will be fine going forward. I still have him here in the second tier. He's probably not going to be Zeke of old, where he's going to lead the league in rushing, but he's still part of a really good offense, has great scoring upside. So let's keep him here at number 8. And then at number 9, Austin Eckler. He's going to be a little more up and down. He's not a guy who's going to get as many carries as those other running backs we've talked about. But after getting surprisingly no work as a receiver in week 1, he was back and he was fine in week 2. And I think that Chargers offense has shown it can produce points on a weekly basis. So Austin Eckler there, number 9, very high floor guy in PPR leagues. All right, moving along to tier 3, Joe Mixon. Well, which Mixon you're going to get from week in, week out, we don't know. Week 1, over 100 yards, looked great. Week 2, disappointing. Look, at least he's healthy. Let's just put it that way. He's healthy. That offensive line is not good, so that could be an issue for them. But Mixon is a guy who has tremendous upside. There's just nobody that threatened his workload because their backup right there is Samaje Perine, and he's barely going to come in. So Mixon is one of the guys that is technically a workhorse for his team. So you have to like that. He's got the ability. It's just the offense is going to have its ups and downs. So while he is a little bit more matchup dependent, you have to keep him plugged in each and every week. So Mixon right now is my number 10. I'd love to put Antonio Gibson higher, but that's a guy that, after week 1, looking like he might take over the pass catching duties. Now all of a sudden, JD McKissic is back and looming to steal that work from him. McKissic was held out without a catch in week 1, and then all of a sudden he comes in and he's got 5 catches in week 2. A switch at quarterback. We don't know exactly what to expect with Heineke at the helm. You have to like Gibson's talent, and I think they will still use him as a receiver. But again, this is also a guy that's hard to predict exactly how he'll be used from week to week, and we saw that as a rookie. But he is still on the RB1 radar right there, but just barely. And then you talk about David Montgomery, also no threat to his touches. He's looked really sharp. I know some people were worried about regression after the way he ended last year, thought it was just because of the schedule. Well, he's proved them wrong. He's looked really good the first couple of weeks. If Justin Fields is a quarterback going forward, I think we'll see even more Montgomery. Will that hold the offense back as a whole unit? That remains to be seen. Will Fields and his running ability kind of vulture some scores and some carries from Montgomery? I don't think so. I don't think they're going to have too many design runs, so I'm not worried about that. So Montgomery, again, they're right there on the cusp of the RB1 conversation, and I barely have him ahead of Najee Harris. Love Harris. His talent is there. The problem with Harris is the offensive line, and also the fact that Big Ben, he's just looking like a shell of himself. The arm strength isn't there. He's making more mistakes than usual. So I'm a little bit worried about this whole offense, to be honest. And Najee's ceiling might not be as high as I initially thought. But this is also a guy who is going to be the only running back getting valuable touches at the goal line as a receiver. So that's going to prop him up in his floor. So I still like Najee Harris, but I have him more as a high-end RB1 at this point. And then closing out this group, well, that seems pretty low for Saquon Barkley, doesn't it? Where do we put Saquon Barkley these days? Because he hasn't performed like an RB1 or even RB2 lately. I think he's on the upswing. And so I'm still okay with the fact that you might have drafted him as a top 10, a first round pick at running back, because by season's end, and especially fantasy playoffs towards the very end of the year, I think he'll get there. He is going to be the guy who catches passes out of that backfield. They didn't really bring in anybody who's going to threaten his workload either. So you might not love the Giants offense either, but you know what? Barkley has that weekly upside to have huge boom games, and that's what you want. So I think that Barkley is going to keep getting worked more and more into the offense. They pretty much said that's what was going to happen, and we have seen his workload ramp up. So don't worry about Barkley. I can't put him higher than that right now based on what we've seen. But I do have a feeling that the next time I update these rankings, he'll move up at least a couple of spots. All right, let's move on to now the fourth tier. We're talking about guys who are solid RB2 types that you should be starting each and every week. They're just not necessarily going to have that same ceiling as some of the other guys we talked about. So Chris Carson, again, a rock in that offense. He's going to get the scores. He's going to get the pass catching work. There's really no reason to worry about Carson on a week-to-week basis. You talk about a guy like Damian Harris. Look, I've always been higher on Damian Harris than everybody else. I get he's not going to be the receiver there. James White is always going to loom as a third down back. And that's fine, because you know what? At this point, there are just not any running backs left that are going to be the do-it-all. All right, so Harris is, though, going to have more upside than before because Cam Newton's not there to steal his goal line work or vulture carries or anything like that. He's going to be the featured back. Ramondre Stevenson isn't seeing the field these days. All right, he's got some work to do, despite how amazing he looked in the preseason. And there's nobody else. So Harris is kind of a workhorse in New England. It's hard to believe Bill Belichick actually featuring a running back. It looks like he's doing that with Harris, this guy who's averaging 5 yards a carry. I feel really good about his floor. I feel better about him in standard non-PPR leagues than in full PPR league. But still, I feel like Harris is at this point the last solid kind of set and forget RB2 who isn't going to fluctuate too much on a weekly basis. Kareem Hunt, you like his ability, but again, he's behind Chubb. He's going to do a little bit better in games where they might be playing from behind, and he's going to get more receiving work. So I do feel like you can, for the most part, not worry about Hunt, but he's going to have some duds here and there, just because of the way he's used. And then our final tier here, talk about to round out the top 20 running backs rest of the season. These are guys that honestly, I just don't have a lot of, and you can't feel great about necessarily, but they have that talent that, on certain weeks, they could help you win a game. And so DeAndre Swift, I've been dogging him all preseason, all draft season. I just don't have him anywhere. But you can't discount him either. Even though Jamal Williams looked like he is the lead back in Detroit, for whatever that's worth, Detroit just not a great team in general. But DeAndre Swift is going to be a guy that gets those receptions when they're playing from behind. He's used in the red zone. And, he has that breakaway ability. So that's why I prefer him over Jamal Williams. Even though Jamal Williams is kind of that safer pick, I can't discount Swift's talent. So I'm still going to keep him here, even though it kind of pains me to do so because I told people not to draft DeAndre Swift at his ADP. James Robinson, falling like a brick here. He should have been in at least the third tier, and Jacksonville just looks so bad. We can't put him any higher. Will that change? Who knows? Maybe at some point they'll figure things out, but this offense is definitely a work in progress. And James Robinson getting the opportunities, just not being very efficient. And you know what? It's not his fault. The offensive line, also a work in progress, and they're just playing from behind constantly. I don't know if that'll ever change. So Robinson, at least he's getting the touches. That's what you want to see out of a starting running back. But man, that offense definitely needs some work. And the defense too. And then at number 20, might surprise some people. I know there's some running backs that I've left out here. There's only so many I can fit in the top 20. I'm going with one of my favorite draft picks, and that is Javonte Williams. Look, I get it's a strict timeshare here, split down the middle between Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams. They're both getting equal opportunity so far. It's almost done too. I get that they're getting both equal opportunities so far, but I feel like Javonte Williams is going to start to pull away. And again, we're talking rest of the season. Who's going to help you down the stretch when it matters the most? I think Williams is going to get more of the carries, more of the valuable touches when it matters the most. Because again, looking forward, it's Williams who's going to be the RB1 in Denver next year, and Melvin Gordon probably won't be around. So as of right now, I still have faith that Williams has that upside that could help you win your league down the stretch. All right, those are my top 20 running back rankings for the rest of the season. Don't forget to check out our wide receiver version too. And if you like what you see here, hit that subscribe button. We definitely appreciate it. Thanks for watching.